Hi, and welcome to the MyCOE Global Connections and Exchange Program webinar. This is our webinar on environmental sustainability topics for the green economy and online resources that we're going to be sharing with you. And I just want to remind you that during the webinar there is a questions window that you can submit questions online. Those will pop in and I'll address those. And also as we go through, there's also a chat window that you could use if you need to ask a question. So I just want to remind you about those two functions. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started going through the topics of today's session. Just a brief overview of My Community, Our Earth, the Global Connections and Exchange Program. The main activity for this program is to facilitate exchanges between classrooms around the world about geography and sustainability topics, using resources and materials, and we are going to support and facilitate those exchanges so that students can conduct investigations and then conduct exchanges about their findings and learn to know other classes that are working on the similar or same topics in different parts of the world. So the main outcome of this particular project is that there will be youth projects conducted using the MyCOE 5-step approach and in collaboration with other youth or sharing them through our Geo portal and using social media on the web to comment and create exchanges and get to know other people in other classrooms around the world. So with that, just a quick dot map of our participating sites. This just gives you a little bit of an overview. The countries are the U.S., the Philippines, Nicaragua, Bolivia, and Ghana. This is a graphic that shows the connections of the locations by country. So we have a lot of locations in different countries that are all working together and participating in the project. The green economy is an interesting topic because it seems to me that this is a label that's been applied to recently to economic activities that for a long time have also been the same as a sustainable development type of definition. So I decided that probably it might be helpful. I'm not sure how many other people are really familiar with the green economy. It's a broad label that's applied to a lot of topics and maybe has achieved the status of a buzzword. So I thought for our purposes it might be helpful for all the teachers and coordinators to let's have a definition of what the green economy is. And this definition comes from UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program. And their working definition of a green economy as one that results in improved human well-being and social equity while significantly reducing environmental risks and ecological scarcities. They've added this sentence which says, in its simplest expression, a green economy can be thought of as one which is low carbon, resource efficient, and socially inclusive. And I'm wondering if anyone is having an audio problem. We have one person who sent a question about audio. So I'm going to send a chat out. And I'm just waiting to see if anybody is having audio problems. I've sent out a chat in the box, and obviously you won't hear me, but if you are experiencing audio, okay. All right, so it looks like we're back working again. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear. So in this, this is the working definition by which the UNEP has expressed its definition for a green economy. I think one starting point is to even have students agree or disagree about whether they agree with this definition. As we all know, you can apply different lenses or perspectives, and so this might even be a starting point with students to decide is this a good definition of what a green economy is or should be. Additionally, we start to think about, well, how do we see a green economy? Where's the evidence for a green economy? How do we know what's happening? And so if we were looking for green economic activity that we could observe or that students might be able to do a project with, we might look in these different areas, and they really are very broad. We might look in agriculture, and agriculture in this instance I believe would include food production. So maybe there are some examples of truck farming or food production trying to get closer to city centers, so to reduce transportation and fuel consumption in the production and distribution of the food. It might be in building codes and or in city planning. This might look like green space, or it might look like new accepted modes of building in a community, perhaps energy efficiency, solar panels, maybe even green roofs where they use a plant cover on the roof. There might be alternative energy sources that you're seeing, solar panels, charging stations for electric cars or hybrid cars. We might see some kind of wind turbines, or I just saw the other day an article on ocean turbines, and other people may be very familiar with that, but I hadn't seen those yet. They're put offshore where there's a lot of wave action, and the ocean turbines are being activated by waves. So any examples like that might be happening in your area. Also forestry, manufacturing, tourism, ecotourism, green tourism. There may be some of that developing in your location. Transportation is public transport, maybe using biofuels or modifying transport schedules, maybe using more technology, ticketing, those kinds of things in order to make sure that it's the most efficient system. We are familiar with different kinds of public transit, but we may also see a shift to bike lanes, more bicycle transportation as opposed to everybody driving their own vehicle. Also waste and recycling. There might be projects going on in your community that are actually increasing the use, decreasing landfill matter, and making advances, actually making economic activities out of those things as well. And then water use and the efficient use of resources in general. I think that's something else that a lot of places are trying to increase the efficiency of resource use just overall. So all of these are different areas where you might be able to observe green economic activities going on. And these are all things that we've done in the past. I think the point would be to challenge students to look at news reports on these topics and look for how are we doing it differently. How will we be doing it differently in 5 years? How might we be doing it differently in 10 years? And that's also where I think this is an exciting topic for students, because the green economy, if it is indeed a new way of thinking about economic activities, it's a future, it will play out in the future as these young people enter the job market, as they start working, as they start their careers. They're going to be thinking and working in this different type of economic, or looking for economic activities that are also sustainable and environmentally sustainable and friendly. So I think it's a great topic for youth to think about, and to think about how we might do things differently. So again, we have a resource page for these resources, and that's on the GCE site. It's under Green Economy. On this page, we have materials about teaching and learning about green economy and sustainable development. I think a lot of the sustainable development materials that were developed very much align very closely with the green economy and the idea of identifying green economic activities. And so we've included resources from, with both of these kinds of reports and background information on this. So we have links there that will help the teacher learn more about this topic. The classroom modules and case studies about green economy, those are also located on the page. The online tools that might help students in doing a project, or getting extra data about a project, or comparing and discussing and exchanging with another classroom. We have 2 tools that we're going to look at today: the World Bank's International Human Development Indicators, which is a highly interactive site that allows students to do a lot of exploration with data. And then also World Mapper, which is another site which provides different ways of looking at the world mapped, but by values instead of just geography. And then ideas for youth exchange projects on the green economy. We're going to take a look at that also. So let's take just a second to look at the 5-step project. We're going to formulate a question, observe and acquire data, analyze that data, seek solutions or propose ideas, and then intervene and change or share that information so that people can start thinking differently. And this is the MyCOE approach that we've used in the MyCOE projects. So as you're thinking about these different topics that we go through, you want to keep this 5-step method in mind, because it's a good way to structure an investigation so that it engages your students. So let's jump out of this PowerPoint and take a look at, we want to go to the page in the website, which is the Green Economy page. And this is the list of resources, first starting with the UNEP Green Economy website. And I was able to find a lot of good resources there, including their frequently asked questions page about the green economy. And I think that one of the helpful things when you have a topic that's really broad, like green economy, is to have people think and talk about this within a definition or within a scope so that they can kind of start looking for the commonalities that make it something that they could talk about and exchange. So I think that this is what might provide teachers a really helpful background on that. Also, we have some resources here from UNESCO which are talking about sustainability and inquiry-based learning. And as you'll look through here, all of these resources are available and therefore teachers to explore. These are things that really we want the teachers to kind of look at, see if they're appropriate, and they can be models. Not necessarily that they're going to fit perfectly into everybody's classroom, but that you can look at this as a model and then think about it in terms of your school, your class, your curriculum, and then modify it or make a workable solution for you that is your own. And I think teachers are very good at doing that, and so sometimes it's just having the examples or the models to view. And so we're trying to provide those, realizing that not everybody will actually use this as is, but will take it and use it as a model to learn more. And then I want to look at the online tools that we talked about. The first one being this interactive map from the World Bank. It's very interesting because there is a lot going on here. You have a lot of statistical data represented, including this timeline, which would allow you to step through and see changes in the data in 5-year increments. And you can also see a histogram of this data organized at the top, and this will give you additional information as well as finding and identifying the locations where things are at the time. So it's accessing databases at different times as well as providing you locational information. So when you roll over a specific area, now you'll notice that since 2000 we're incrementing at a different rate. This is a good thing to point out to students in that the time scales on this are a little different, and to make sure that they watch so they know which year they're looking at for data. Now, the development index is here's the information. It measures an average achievement in 3 basic dimensions of human development. And so I think this is also documented very well, the data that they're using, and what you might find as you start exploring this. Again, there's composite indexes, and then they also have additional data that's available. And your students might be able to look at this and decide in terms of a green economy which of these things are most important. We talked about some of those areas like fuel impact or forest area. If this is an area, this might be some data that would be helpful for your students to take a look at. Change in forest area in general, but also freshwater use. So there's a lot of data that's displayed in this particular resource. I think it's pretty well done too, in that it's amazing how much information is available just through this one interface. The second online tool that I want to talk about briefly is the World Mapper. And the World Mapper is a .org website. It produces maps that display the value in a geographic area. So it's a little different way to look at a world map. And it has a lot of map categories. They also have some that are animations. But if you take a look, there are some different areas. I've in reviewing this already looked at the fuel and pollution, some of the different categories that they had, and I was interested in electrical production. And if we take a look at that particular map, you can see that which countries are producing a lot of electricity, which countries are producing less. It is kind of interesting to see just how that data is displayed by value as opposed to just the geographic space. So it kind of gives you a different perspective. If you look at some of these, you might even look at the difference in who's using a lot of coal in the world versus who isn't. And so I think that these maps, as students look and find their location, might be interesting to look at the sources of power or electrical energy in the world. So anyway, that is another resource that I wanted to show and share with you today. If you aren't familiar with it, maybe you will even see in the map categories some other topics that you would maybe be able to use this even as a discussion starter in your classes. Okay, now I'm going to jump back to our PowerPoint. And I have a poll question that I'd like for you to respond to. And that is, have you observed any media reports on green economic activity in your area? Just an easy yes, no, but let's take a vote and see what we get. So I'm going to launch that poll for you, and you can respond. Oh, okay. People are voting right now. We have about 86% saying yes, they're aware of different things. And we have now about 80% saying yes and about 20% saying no as far as being able to, if they've seen local examples. What I think is that what we're going to try to do is facilitate seeing these things maybe through the lens of a green economic activity and looking to see, are there places, industries, even city codes or planning where we can find evidence of people thinking a little differently about conservation, reduction of consumption, or reuse of existing resources, and to move towards a more sustainable yet high quality standard of living. One of our ideas is to, we've created a green economy scavenger hunt, and I'll talk more about that in just a little bit, to start providing areas for students to look at to find examples. They might not be really obvious, but if you start questioning and doing that investigation in the 5-step program, I think maybe you can kind of guide students to start seeing these different things that are happening. One thing is you might look to see if there are local changes to improve the efficient use of resources, both consumption and production. There could be different things happening. Sometimes we always think about how we're producing things, but it might also be consuming, and it might also be reusing. And so I think thinking creatively about how we're using the resources that are already in the consumption, production, and then waste system. Local changes to improve environmental conditions, maybe that's green spaces, Maybe it is just being careful about runoff, managing runoff, developing ways to reduce the amount of chemical that are introduced into a water system or a watershed. There can be a lot of, I think, kind of simple examples that you might find if you put on that green economy lens as you look at the news reports. And also, I think one thing that people are kind of seeing is that what new economic activities are, and employment, what kind of jobs? You've heard the label green jobs. What does it really mean to find green jobs, and how do we generate economic activity that actually is sustainable and good for us? And a lot of things are. So we've been doing these things for a long time. Some things that maybe don't have quite as good of an environmental track record, as they modify and change, we probably might see that there are also economic activities that result from that as well. So now what I'd like to try, and this is just kind of an experiment, we'll see how it goes, but what I would like for you to do is to submit an idea to the question window or to the chat window, but the question window, if they come in the question window, then I'm going to read off these brainstorming ideas and let you all respond to the ideas in the chat window about whether this is something that's going on in your region. You know, maybe if you have a local example that you've seen in the news, if you share that now, we can talk about it with the entire group, and it will spark somebody's ideas about where they might look in their local location to figure out whether this kind of activity is going on there as well. So if you take a minute, think about, what have you heard about? What have you been seeing? The first one that's popped in is solar garden proposals in the community. Okay, that's interesting, an idea. Ecotourism opportunities that are with a low environmental impact. I think that's actually really interesting. I think there are more and more of these organizations that are organizing low impact tourism, especially in some environmentally sensitive areas. And those are areas hopefully we want to preserve. We have an example of a solid waste management project. And it could be that people are looking for ways to share that information. They might be reselling raw materials or processed materials as a part of the waste management. Somebody else is suggesting IP's practices towards green economy. I'm not sure what IPs are, but go ahead and maybe flesh that out a little more. Oh, okay. That's for indigenous people. Got it. Okay, biogas is mentioned. We also have looked into green chemistry and the impacts, what extent the impacts of the projects would be felt by the community where we are. I think, that really is variable depending on what's happening in your community. Sometimes when there's a newsworthy event going on, the students are really interested, and you might pick up different examples of how they can engage, how they might participate in volunteer programs. It might also be doing presentations to a county board, a city council, an admin council, something of that nature. And a biogas project, that's interesting. So I think, and you start thinking about a lot of questions that you see in the news about, I think it's, looking for the economic activities that are changing as a result of trying to be more environmentally sustainable. And I think that a lot of places start to see this as a business model, and change is not always necessarily fast, but I think that there are a lot of places where we're starting to see this. All right, so what I'd like to do now is to go back and take a look at some of the project ideas that we've come up with, some which really aren't that different than you all have just brainstormed right now. And the first one is a green economy scavenger hunt. We tried to come up with a way to organize these topics so that students could start thinking about examples in these different areas and industry sectors or topic areas if you want. So we developed a project guide, which is a scavenger hunt guide, where the students can actually go, and you don't have to go outside your classroom if you're limited on travel or being able to take the students outside. However, you can find these in media reports. You can find them on the web for different websites that might be offering these things. A lot of times, like for example, ecotourism, you might find a place locally just by searching the internet that you didn't even know was doing ecotourism or green tourism. So what we challenge the students to do is to see if they can find one example in each of these areas. If so, they get 3 bonus points, and we know that kids hate to keep track of their points and compare it with who else got points. Actually, that's that's not the point of this exercise, but with kids, sometimes it's the motivating factor that gets them really hooked on trying to find these things. But one thing is everybody has the same categories. You can go and look for examples, and your examples may be very different given your locations. And as a result of that, the students can share their scores and find what was the most interesting or unique thing that they learned or discovered as they were doing their scavenger hunt. So I think that this is just one way to get kids started. And what you might use this as is an introductory kind of activity, so that as you're going through and looking for green economic activity in all these areas, you might discover a topic for your class that they really connect with and would like to investigate farther. And so that's the other purpose for kind of having a big picture investigation topic is, and the question for this would be, where in our community and in what industry sectors is our green economic activities occurring? And so then the students would be off on the investigation to find this. Also, we have a couple other activities, a product life cycle form, which would let you track the life cycle pathway of a product. And we kind of already alluded to this when we talked about it's not a matter of just the resource use, but it's also the production and the consumption, and then also what happens to it at that waste level. A global wealth map, students can look at that activity. And most of these project ideas that we try to provide are to create ideas for the students to start their exchanges. It's a common project that you're doing in different locations with different outcomes, and you're going to make different observations. And this is where the exchange and discussion between students can come in. So the student exchanges might focus on agreement or disagreement with the definition of what a green economy or green economic activities are, their unique observations, maybe success stories from your location where they find something in the media, they look to see, you know, why it was successful, what are the different conditions under which it was successful, could it be replicated? And that's another thing is that students may do an activity that they have success with, and they should share it and question or challenge another class to replicate that activity to see if they come up with the same results or similar results, or will they get totally different results. And comparisons of perspectives and data. So you know, doing an analysis of different data points and identifying your criteria so that another class could replicate that project and then compare their observations also. So these are a couple of the ideas that we've had. I just wanted to point out to you also that the knowledge community is going to be a great go-to place for links to resources. The resource page will be linking out. The knowledge community is where teachers can discuss and share. Now, in some places, examples of green economy or resources to explore green economic activities, there might be a lot of things out there that you all know about that we haven't discovered yet. And so in the discussion forums, I would encourage you to encourage teachers and all participants that if you find something that you feel is helpful, share it with others. And we can do that through the forums. And in fact, as an example, I'm going to go back just for a second. In our knowledge community, we will start a discussion thread just like we did here for the climate change, and we have a discussion thread. So if you find a great global climate change resource, you post it here. As soon as this webinar is over, I'll post the discussion thread for green economy resources and discussions. And so this would be your place to go to in the knowledge community to discuss these items. So this is going to be there. We'll organize it so that you aren't reading all the postings, but you can go to the topic or post where it's most helpful by theme. So we're making great advances with that knowledge community. It's really developing, so we'll encourage your participation and sharing of information. Because obviously you all have a lot of expertise in this area as well, and so by contributing resources, it will make the project and the resources for teachers that much better if everybody contributes. All right, and in the project, again, this is just a quick list of our participating sites, because after you've done these projects, you are going to want to share them and look for others who may be doing a project in the same area. A listing of the different ways that you might start thinking about sharing this information. The ways to exchange and connect are through the webinars that we're doing online for teacher training. Also the online communities, which we just talked about, the knowledge community, that we just looked at. The technologies, ArcGIS Online, we'll be looking at that platform a little bit later as part of the GeoPortal. The Moodle is the Center for Global Geography Education. The modules that are in there, if you want to do student exchanges using Moodle, which is a course management software, we can do that by request. Video conferencing, uvu, can network together more sites. Some people may use Skype. These are suggestions, but are not limited to these. You can use other social networking technologies that you may be very comfortable with, just as long as you can, reach out, share the information, and then connect with others. Now we're trying to kind of address these things in bite-sized pieces so that it's not overwhelming all at once. And that's the purpose for these multiple webinars at different times. And we really understand that not everybody is going to find the times that we're doing these convenient. The next webinar is on December 12th at 7 a.m. That's going to be very early for a lot of U.S. participants. However, it's a much more manageable time for someone in Ghana or possibly the Philippines, and even not a bad time for Adelaide. So then in January, we have another webinar scheduled that is scheduled at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that will be on January 10th. And that one is focusing on conducting student projects, but also the international exchange. And we'll have some panelists along on that webinar sharing what they've learned doing international student exchanges online. So I'm looking forward to our next two webinars that we'll be having. These are also on the calendar page in the GCE website at www.aag.org GCE, and click on the calendar, and that you'll find the listing for the future webinars as well. So with that, I think that concludes the information that we have to present today. And if you have questions, I'm happy to address any more questions. And again, you'll be able to find links to all of the resources that we've covered today in the GCE main site, which is located at this address. And the resource page is GCE Green Economy specifically. And that will be your stopping place for any additional information. So, does anybody else have any questions about the green economy topics, project topics that they might explore? I'm practicing my very good teacher wait time here. So I'm just giving you a little time to think.
I'll pitch in an idea, Susan.
Sure.
Just as you were going over that, it just reminded me that a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, the city of Greensburg, Kansas had a devastating tornado, and they completely rebuilt the city in a green way. And I thought that that might be an interesting exercise to have the students do a what if. What if we had to rebuild our city? And look at that case study from Greensburg. That might be another interesting activity to look at. Some of the sites that are participating have had some disasters happen or nearby, so it might also resonate with a few of the sites to think about it in that way.
Sure. And I noticed in doing a little bit of research that several countries have green building councils at a national level, and many of their websites for a green building council has information about city planning, even for urban renewal. And it's very interesting to me, and having lived in a densely populated city, I have an entirely new appreciation for the idea of walkable neighborhoods and developing things that are close together. The huge expansive parking lots that we might see at a big box store or in suburbia or in and around shopping malls, while necessary in a suburban area, would actually just be not only very expensive and a waste of space in a densely populated area, but it also makes the walkability very difficult because you're actually going over a lot of space. So interestingly, the building councils also include a lot of information about city planning, how to develop these new and appealing neighborhoods that people will be drawn to. How do we build for not only efficiency with resources and energy and building materials, but also space. And so I think it's very interesting. I saw an article recently on rethinking the suburb development, and I found that to be kind of interesting. Okay, while we've been talking, I haven't seen any more questions come in, and so I thank you for your participation and attendance today. And we have 2 more webinars on the calendar for now. We'll be communicating with you via the knowledge community and sending more information out. So thank you very much, and we will connect with you again in the next webinar. Thanks so much for attending.